Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrea, Associate Editor of Voluholics, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and it's Tiredcast this week. We are both wiped out.
I.
It's
I had like a couldn't sleep thing last night. A little
oh,
insomnia thing going on. It's been happening to me Sunday nights. It's like usually we're going so hard and fast during the weekends. No sleep, up early, doing stuff
hmm
with kids, yards, and that sort of stuff. That when Sunday rolls around, I wake up, I just crawl out of bed, have to do my Sunday stuff. I spent all day being exhausted, and then when it's time to go to bed, I'm like, "Oh, I'm just gonna lie down and watch a little TV," and I get into like this perfect little zone
uh-huh.
of not sleeping. So I finished off the second season of Blacklist, which was
All
okay.
right.
I'm not in love with that show. I like James Spader,
Yes.
and she has like the world's most like trapezoidal face, and it's mesmerizing to see how her chin and her jaw line all makes that shape. But it's a little predictable, not super great. There's been some surprises, and then I started watching season 5 of Walking Dead, which just
Oh,
hit
okay.
Netflix as well, and that's interesting. I've now found that the horror of the show is not so much the zombies; it's maybe they'll just keep talking so much they'll forget to put zombies in it, and I'll just have to listen to people talking all the time without any zombies. There needs
It gets a little slow sometimes.
just a bit on the
Little
shut up,
little
and
bit slow.
somebody needs to get eaten. Like I was so happy when somebody got eaten. I don't know what episode it was. I
Well
was like,
then,
"Oh, look at that! You got eaten!" And
Fear the Walking Dead is not your show.
oh, it's leaving less zombies.
There is a serious lack of the zombie eating of the people in that show.
I don't approve of that in any way,
Nope,
shape, or
that's
form.
not what people are watching Walking Dead for, folks. I would
Apparently, it's
like a
not the
zombie.
zombies.
I would like a zombie, please.
Yes, just give me some more of that. All right, this is AV Rent, the show where we answer your home theater and AV questions, and we always like to answer those questions. To do that, you have to ask. You can ask by emailing us at rob@avrent.com, tom@avrent.com, and question@avrent.com, or questions if you plural. It all goes to the same place. It goes to our producer, Austin, who is not here tonight, but has his own podcast called
We watch movies.
Not We. We're not invited. But
That's
he
right.
and his friends watch movies and talk about it. I'm gonna guilt him into inviting at least one of us onto that podcast at some point.
I don't know, man. You and I might end up talking over him like we did when he was here last. I felt bad about that. We didn't give him enough
We
opportunity
didn't.
to
And you know
talk.
what? I kind of said that. I said, you can show up for the podcast. You kind of, like producers do. That's what he is, a producer. He
True.
helps us behind the scenes, and he's there on the air. And sometimes the producers say a lot, and sometimes they don't. So I really got no problems with that. And I think that as he's on the podcast more, he'll start to come into his own as far as feeling like he knows where he is. And right now, we're just kind of jamming through the questions as fast as we can.
I
So if
agree.
you can't email us directly, first of all, email all three of us if you can, the question and Rob and Tom. But at least get it to question, and then it'll show up.
Yes.
Though it's also good to send it to Rob. If you send it to me, that's just gravy. If you want to go somewhere else and interact with us, you can go to www.avrant.com. You can go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/avrant podcast. That's all one word. And a G plus, that sort of thing. So at Tom plus, whatever the heck you are. Anyways, no one uses G plus.
No.
My G plus feed is so sad. It's like I'll check it, and then like 3 days later I'll check it. I'm like, oh look, 5 more posts. Sad face. Nobody posts on G plus. Anyways, we record these on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time, which is fantastic. We do it live, and you can watch us if you don't want to wait for the podcast to get out, which sometimes comes out the next day and sometimes comes out right before the next podcast is going to be recorded. All depends on how lazy and or busy I am.
Mm,
So I have not passed over editing duties to Austin
Austin.
yet, but I'm
That's
thinking
right.
about it.
He's not full producer. He is
Not full producer.
co-producer with Tom.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's not getting that big full producer money, whatever that might be. What is a percentage of zero? So if you want, I don't remember what I was saying. Anyways,
Well, we can
so
do Twitter. We forgot Twitter.
Twitter at First Reflect for you, and at avrant_Tom for me, and at Austin Pond for Austin. If you want to ask him a question like, "Why didn't you talk more on that last podcast?" That'd be a good question to ask.
Aw.
Aw. Why don't you tell those two buttheads to shut up?
Yeah,
That
to
would be
shut
even
up.
better
Yeah, that would
question.
that would be how.
All right. So we have our listeners of the week. Our listeners of the week support the podcast in some way. Last week, I mentioned that my wife had lost her job and that she was on the market. So I want to send out some thank yous to some people who sent in emails with some ideas and suggestions, and even a couple of people who said, hey, I don't know if this helps, but if you need an interview with this dude, I can make that happen. And so far it hasn't helped, but it's still helpful to know that there's people out there that care. I have also apparently signed up for LinkedIn, and by apparently I mean my wife did it, and then I now have to finish it. So I have yet another social network which I will be somehow sharing. I will also share on our for those of you that want to help out my wife in some way to get a job. Remember, she's a civil engineer, but she's also a really good communicator and is good at interpersonal type stuff. She's getting her professional, was it PMP certification? That's project management professional certification, which
All
you should be
right.
getting it next week. So I'll put her LinkedIn account up there. But I want to thank Herb over at Cross Spectrum Labs. He sent in the email with a little bit of help there. Carl, Jonathan, and Chris all did something in order to to help me out. On the other hand, we had you, who has been going through some family stuff, and you mentioned a little bit about that on the podcast last week. And I asked you to keep track because people have been, in general, when you have mentioned it, specifically in emails to them, have been sending words of encouragement and stuff back.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
because of the fact that you mentioned on the podcast, you got specific letters just about that, and I asked you to keep track of those so you could thank those people. So
Yes, and I very much apologize if I missed anybody because that is completely by accident. If that is the case, I tried to keep track. So I did keep track of Scott M, Gabe, Chris, Jason, Gary. That is Infinite Gary, and Scott S. So yeah, I
Two
definitely
Scotts.
got your messages, and I very much appreciate it. And people really are like genuinely trying to help out any way they can, which is really nice. A very genuine sort of, hey, you've helped us out with our audio video stuff, so if there's anything we can do, that type of thing. So that's really nice. It's really helpful. One of the reasons I'm wiped out today is it was a long day of arranging for like lifts and home support and getting in touch with case managers and many phone calls waiting for them to get returned.
Cutting through the bureaucracy, right?
Contractors to try and do things to the house. Yes, it was a very eventful day, but quite productive. So it's a good kind of tired.
Thank you for all that emotional support. On the other side, are we going with? Is it Elango? Is that what we're saying? That says
Ilongo, I think.
Elango. Elango sent us a donation to help support the podcast financially. Cover our costs, which is what it basically does, is cover our costs. You can do that by going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the buy us a cup of coffee, and then giving us a PayPal donation. You can do that if you have a PayPal account, or if you don't, you can just put a credit card number. It goes to PayPal. We have no control over that. John, on the other hand, bought a sub from HSU, or she.
Yeah, I think it's that.
Anyways, HSU, and
HSU.
he let them know that he bought that sub because of us. And Ken let SVS know that his friend's Prime Satellite 5.1 package purchase was because of our recommendation. So that's always helpful. On top of that, James, who's I guess the CEO or creator or sole proprietor, I don't know exactly how it works, of Rainy Lake Audio. We've talked about him before. He has decided to start selling those panels, the covers for your panels, your homemade DIY absorption panels, and he'll put a picture on there for you. You have to call him to figure out which pictures he has or whatever. But he's going to send us a sample, one each, I think, for each one of us, and we're going to test it out. And it's going to. I think we're going to see it before he sees it. So I think we're getting betas. I think it's what we're getting.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of fine with me. Okay.
Yeah, because he says he's still finalizing exactly the fabric and then
Yeah.
nailing down exactly the sizes and stuff. So that's
Yeah.
cool, though. I'm eager to see them.
Yes. So thank you, all of you. You are all listeners of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Let me say, if any of you guys, like I said, I told my wife this too. She laughed. I said, if any of you guys end up directly contributing to my wife getting a job, you're listener of the year, and everybody gets to hear your name 52 weeks in a row because we don't
All
take
right.
breaks. And in fact, next week is my birthday, and I will be recording on my birthday. That's October 5th is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
I will be big 4-4. What up? I don't think there's a way to do that coolly. Anyways, all right. Shall we get on with it?
Let's shall.
Scrolling the wrong thing. All right, in the news, I honestly don't know what this is. I mean, I know what it is, but I don't know what it does or why anyone needs it.
Yeah.
I found a press release from Burson Audio. They are releasing what they're calling the Supreme Sound Audio Components. And this is Generation 5 of all discrete op amps, which no one ever asked for, needed, or thought was a good idea until they came out and said, you know what you don't have? Are op amps.
You know what I actually suspect this is about? Because down towards the bottom of this press release, they mention their op amp to the tester. Bottom. Oh, yeah. I actually think, I think they called it the Lycan, so yay.
Yay for Underworld.
But it's an op amp tester. So they're like, want to prove to yourself that you're really hearing a difference? Use our tester. I think that's what they're actually selling. I think it's really about the tester as opposed to the op amps themselves. Yeah, it's weird that they're calling them like discrete non-IC op amps because almost by definition op amps are integrated circuits. So I don't really know what's going on, and given that they're considerably larger than any printed op amp, that means automatically they're less efficient.
But they're more efficient than Generation 4. So
yeah, more efficient than Generation 4. That's right. Yeah.
You got to understand from the perspective of the high-end audio crowd, anytime you can separate something out from something else, you make it better.
Right. Yeah.
And if you can make it bigger and less efficient, it is better.
Yeah. And talking about like fewer components, so purer signal. I'm like, no, you want those filters. The filters are there for a reason. No. They didn't just put them in there by accident.
They did. That is clearly by design to make your music not sound as smooth and dynamic and spacious. And
anyway, I guess you can build a larger headphone amp that generates more heat with these.
Hey, Wade Robson reviews headphones, and he got and I was so super jealous when he got this. He got a headphone amp that's a tube headphone amp. I was like, oh, I want a tube headphone amp. I want one. That's so sexy.
It could probably work pretty darn well there because you barely need any current to drive headphones.
I know, and it's tubes. Sexy. Anyhow,
light up.
Rob, via Infinite Gary, has sent us some information about how your 4K display, which you have not bought yet, is already obsolete because Sharp is going to release an 85-inch 8K TV in October, meaning at Cedia, and there's going to have one. And if you really want to buy it, it's going to be $125,000 to $130,000.
Yeah. The fun part of it is, the only way to get the signal into it right now, I think they have like a proprietary connection because obviously this is meant for like digital signage and not for in your house. But they have 4 HDMI inputs, which if you have a source that can feed all 4 of those 4K resolution HDMI inputs simultaneously, it stitches it all together into 8K. Yeah. Good luck with that. But that's how you're getting your 8K image. Fun times. They're saying maybe by 2020 we'll have them in our homes. So, that's not that far away. 5 years away.
Why do we need... Okay. I'm not getting started. I'm not going down this rabbit hole with you, sir. It's not happening. Brian. He just bought a new house and is building his theater room. The room is 15 by 16 by 8. 15 by 16 by 8. You know what that almost is?
2 cubes.
I looked at, that's a lot of multiples of 8 is what I know the 15 isn't exactly right, but I think the sound doesn't care that much, and I think it's
Some strong
You
standing
should put
waves.
those. There's going to be some standing waves in there that are not going to be your friend. You, sir, need 4 subs. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you that right now. Just get your wife used to the idea. You need one
Yep.
in each corner.
Yep.
Booyah.
Yep.
All right. Anyways, you would like to go with a 150-inch screen. What he now? Which is the maximum his JVC HD 550 can throw from 14 feet. Anyways, we checked that, and by we I mean Rob, and actually he didn't take into account the size of the projector housing,
Mm.
so really he can only get 140 inches, maybe even a little bit less than
Yeah.
140.
Yeah, it's you're always measuring from the lens, so from the very front of the projector to the screen. So if the lens is 14 feet away, and given that his room is 15 by 16 and that JVC HD 550 is over a foot long from front to back, I don't imagine there's any opportunity to even have it the 15 feet away it would need to be from
Yeah.
lens to screen to create 150
And
inches.
you
So
got to consider, unless the inputs are side mounted, you have to the connectors are also going to stick out the back a certain amount. You got to factor all that in.
yeah,
Unless
yeah,
you're going to embed this thing in the wall and then, hey, yay for heat.
I can't remember exactly on that model. I think they've sort of recessed the plugs so
But they
you
never.
could,
I mean, you could get some of those.
yeah, 90-degree angle
90-degree
connectors or
angle
something like
ones,
that. Yeah, but I think 14 feet from lens to screen is very much possible in this room. And if that's the case, then it's 140-inch diagonal screen size that would be his maximum screen size in here. Just a note.
Anywho, his wife says bigger is better.
Yeah, so 4 subs.
Yeah, there you go. You went in one direction with that, and my mind was going in a completely different direction. But
4
let's
is
go
a
with
bigger number than 1
You
or
are
2.
right. You are,
It is.
or 3. Now that we're
Or
mentioning all the
3.
possibilities.
Yes.
But this will leave just enough room on the sides for speakers and just enough space below to put us a center on a tiny stand in the middle with the screen touching the ceiling. Well, you got
Woo.
it's a slightly smaller screen now, so you got a little bit more room.
Right.
So, and he's asking, is bigger really better in this case? No. Unless you're sitting on the first of all, are you sitting? Is he sitting on the back wall? He's not sitting on the back wall, is he?
I'm not sure. Yeah. I mean, like we've said before, your preference in screen size, we have no problem if you like to sit 10 feet away from a 150-inch screen, get
Knock
it
yourself out.
on. Like,
I honestly don't think you do, though. I mean, where do you sit in the movie
double
theater?
check.
Yeah.
Double check.
Take your wife out for a date night. Take her to the movie theater. Say you picked the spot, and go see movies nobody's seeing, because then you can do it in the middle of the movie if you really want to. Go see something that nobody's really in there for, and then when the movie starts, kind of figure out where the edges of the screen are. And if you guys are happy with that, you can change your seats and get to right where you are. And I've said this before, pace yourself down there. How many steps does it take you down there? How many steps from one edge of the screen to the other edge of the screen is there? And what's that ratio? Because that's what you need to do. And if you do that ratio and you come home and you say, okay, that ratio is this. So if I'm sitting 10 feet away from the screen, I want a screen that on the bottom, across the bottom, is this big because of the ratio. Okay. Yep. Once you do that, if it comes out 140 inches, I would be shocked to begin with. I would be shocked, unless you're sitting on the back wall, then maybe it will.
Oh, but,
yeah. So I don't necessarily think bigger is better. I think the right size is better than just having big, because there's a couple things you got to worry about. One, you'll turn your head. Two, really with me, eye fatigue becomes an issue, and most importantly, nausea. Honestly,
well, I think the even easier thing, because he mentioned specifically the JVC HD 550, which means he has it, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So he has that. I guess he's building his theater in the new house, so it's not necessarily all set up, but even if you have to throw let's say the walls aren't constructed yet, so he can't do the whole thing I was going to suggest, which is just put the projector in the room, put your seat where you're going to want it, and throw the image onto the wall and adjust the zoom until it's the size you want, then measure that and get that screen size. So maybe there's no drywall to throw the image on, but throw up a bed sheet.
Yeah, anything.
Just throw up any, because I mean this is exceedingly temporary. It is strictly for you to actually throw an image onto something with your seat where you're planning to have it, and then seeing how big a screen you actually want. Because there is such a thing as too big for the size I like. There
Yeah.
are screens that are too large for my seating distance that I would not enjoy watching every day. So,
I have been forced to sit at the very front of the movie theater, very close to the front. Actually, I
mhm.
think I actually sat in the front row once to see a Batman movie. Like, I think it might have been I don't know, maybe it was The Crow or something. It was a long time ago, and it was so miserable that I couldn't see what was going on. You know, I
Mhm.
had to keep like turning my head. I'm like, where's the action now? Oh, is that no, in that corner? What corner is it? I'm very confused right now.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, there was too big. There was definitely too big. So but 4 subwoofers. All
Mhm.
right, now his second question is, what do we think of the Bic America speakers? I'll let Rob go first because Rob's going to be nice.
Okay. I think they're a pretty good choice when you need to pay a minimal amount of money for the most efficient speakers that you can buy. So if you've got a big room and you're sitting quite far away and you don't have a gigantic beefy amp, these are an okay choice in my opinion. Yeah, they're very affordable. They're very efficient. I wouldn't call them supremely linear or accurate, but that's not what you're going for. You're going for max output for the fewest number of dollars.
Do you need max output for the fewest number of dollars?
Not
Do
in a
you need
15
that?
by 16-foot room.
You are in a fairly small room, dude. You don't need that. I think that you can do better. I think that you can shop around and do better. There's a lot of speakers out there that
Even
are
at the same price.
at the same price are better
Yeah.
choices. I am not a huge fan. Bic America are the type of speakers where I'm like, oh wait, the other option is nothing. Fine. Or the other option is something where no, come on, I'm
Aww.
serious. I'm being serious here. The other option is something that I really don't like, then fine. Bic is fine. Because they are very inexpensive and they're fine. I mean, they're fine for entry level.
Mm.
But if you're thinking of a 140-inch screen and obviously you're thinking of 4 subwoofers, then you've really I think you're not an entry level dude. I think that you want something better than that. And you can get better than that at spending the same or very little more than Bic.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hear your budget and come back at us and let us make some suggestions because I think we can do better than that. Kevin on Twitter wants to know why SVS doesn't make sealed cylinder subwoofers. Why would they?
Just to have a different shape. That,
You
yeah.
see, we make sealed subwoofers in boxes so we make them smaller and we
Mm-hmm.
put bigger amps in them, or they have less output, which is what happens with the SVS because they put the same amp in it.
Mm-hmm.
So if the difference here is just height, then you're basically taking that same footprint and you're just making it smaller, and you're putting no port in it, and then it has less output. And then why? I mean, the height is not what is bothering people; it's the shape. You know, it's the fact that it looks like a water heater sitting in the back of your room. That's what's bothering people. So
Mm.
I don't see the
Yeah.
point.
Like the ported cylinders make a lot of sense because they
Right.
do something the boxes can't do, which is they have a small footprint and then they make up for the internal volume and the length of the port necessary by being tall. So they have that advantage, plus they're lighter and cost less to ship. But once you start making it sealed, they're basically going to be the same size as the sealed box. The footprint isn't really going to be any smaller, and the weight isn't going to be a large differential. So you're getting a difference in that, yes, now it's round instead of a cube. But other than that, there's no real advantages. So it would
Yeah.
be strictly an aesthetic choice. It's not a size or a weight or a performance advantage in any way. So I
And
think that's probably why.
it's only recently that the ports have been doing anything other than firing up.
Uh-huh.
You know, and then it's like, you know, so the back you don't even have the complaint of, well, you know, I don't want a port because it's firing into a wall and I have to turn it. No, that's not even a consideration for most of the time that SVS has been making subs. So for them, there was really no motivation to do it, and I don't think
Yeah.
they'll ever make a sealed
Cylinder.
I don't see any reason why. All right, well that's why. That's what we think, or
Yeah.
we can
Might
ask
be a,
them next time we talk.
might be a fun DIY project though, because you can get yourself a little sonotube, and
You can always do that. Yeah.
yeah. So
All right,
could do that.
Justin Not Bieber on Facebook is upgrading his HTPC to Windows 10. He knows Windows 10 does not have Windows Media Center. He would like to know if that will cause an issue when using the media player function in an AVR X3100W, which is what he uses to access music over his network, pulling files off his HTPC to play in his office. I just got something from Microsoft about either the Xbox One or Windows 10 or both, where there's like some update coming that's gonna make things easier to stream or something. I don't really
Oh,
remember.
well, Xbox One definitely has a big update coming in November. There's going to be a
Yeah.
whole new dashboard. It's basically the Windows 10 new OS for Xbox One. And
Oh,
then if you have a Windows 10 PC and you have an Xbox One, you'll be able to stream the gameplay from the Xbox One onto your Windows 10 PC monitor. That's what they've been talking about.
oh, is that what that
So
is?
yeah, it's basically just screen mirroring though, because what you cannot do, as far as what I know, you can't take the Xbox One game, basically move that over to your Windows 10 machine and then use your Xbox One to do something else, like watch Netflix full screen. You can't do that. You can just mirror what's happening on the TV
Oh yeah.
on your Windows 10 machine. So
So
that's
it's like
about
when
it.
it's like casting. Yeah.
But that's all
But
not at all what Justin's been asking about.
I know I was going to say that's not what Justin's asking, but it
No.
doesn't seem like this is not it's a DNLA thing, right? I mean, that's all he's doing
DLNA,
is
yeah,
using
that's right.
what I said.
You said
So I mean, he should.
DNLA, I think.
Did I?
Yeah,
DLNA.
it's one of those. You know what we mean.
Whatever.
DLNA. Yeah,
The
that's
one
what
with
we
the 4 letters.
It
How
is,
many
yeah.
of those can there be in home theater? All of them. That's
Um,
literally
yeah.
all of them. HTPC, HDMI.
So yeah, even though these both share the word media in their name, the media player function on the Denon AVR, it doesn't have anything to do with Windows Media Center inside of Windows 7 or Windows 8.1 Pro. This is just pulling files across your network from a storage location using the DLNA protocol. So as long as you can still access a shared folder on your network, the media player function on the Denon will still work. So no worries there. You don't need Windows Media Center to do that.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that made me think that I needed to have.
Nope, just shared folder. That's all.
Yeah.
Network accessible folder.
Yep. All right, Justin. Oh, I already did that. Justin. Scroll, Tom. Scott on Facebook. New Apple TV or new Amazon Fire TV? Go. I think is that really how the question went when it was like that? Or
Pretty
did he
much,
ask
yeah.
more?
It was quite simple, and I know what he means. Both of these were recently announced. Of course, the Amazon Fire TV, the new one, it's less expensive.
There you go.
And
That's one I choose.
it can do 4K video resolution output, which the new Apple TV cannot. The new Apple TV is still stuck at 1080p. However, the Amazon Fire TV cannot output a high dynamic range signal. So even though Amazon Prime Video has HDR content and they tout it, they're like, we're making stuff in HDR, you can still only watch that content on Samsung SUHD TVs. That's still like the only way to watch it is through the Samsung SUHD app. So you can't even do it through their own new Amazon Fire TV, which is a little disappointing.
Never.
Given
Have they said
that,
it's never going to happen. They
Yeah.
said that.
it'll
Did they say
happen
that?
at some
Seriously?
point. I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
No, that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, if you already have stuff in iTunes, get the Apple TV. If you already have a bunch of Amazon Prime content, get the Amazon Fire TV. Like that's basically what it comes down to, because other than those two content libraries, they do very much the same thing as each other now. The Amazon Fire TV has a better game pad if you want to play Android games on it.
That's funny. Wait, seriously?
Yeah. It looks exactly like an Xbox 360 controller because it basically is.
There
But
you
they
go.
have that. The Apple TV doesn't. However, I might throw my vote for waiting just a teeny tiny little bit until the Roku 4 is announced, because the Roku 4 has all of its FCC and patent filings that are out there. So everyone's like, yeah, we kind of know what's coming. It will apparently do 4K. I don't know if it will do high dynamic range. I don't know if it will. But
you know
I know
the
the
other
other
ones don't.
I know the other two don't. So, and as far as app support goes, Roku kind of can't be beat unless it's iTunes. So
Oh, right. Because
that's the only one.
iTunes. Yeah.
Because iTunes.
Carl, frankly, I just stream stuff. I don't buy content. Like I haven't buy streaming content. My kids were asking if they could rent from Redbox. I had rented the new Mad Max movie, so I watched that the other day. Which literally was just a chase scene. I'm like, this is a car chase.
Yes,
That's
it
all they're
was.
gonna do is a car chase, and they went, yeah.
And then
I
they
was like,
chased some more.
No, I got halfway through the movie, I had to stop to go make dinner for.
They took
everybody
a
and stuff.
little breather. They took a little
That's
breather, and then they chased some more.
I turned around and went the other way. That's where I stopped too. I stopped right about there, and
Oh,
I went and I made dinner and stuff like that. My wife came out. She goes, "Well, how do you like it so far?" I'm like, "Well, it's a Mad Max movie, and I
uh-huh.
think he said about 5 words so
Yep.
far, maybe 6 words so far." I was like, even when he had a chance to say words, he just kind of motioned with the gun. I'm like, really? Okay. Anyways, Carl. Now I was trying to say is that I just stream, and basically, for me, it's all about interface.
Hmm.
So the PS3 was pretty good, but I like the Xbox One interface a little bit better. Though I've had more problems with the Xbox One streaming apps than I've ever had with the
Hmm.
PS3. But I feel like the picture is a lot more solid on the Xbox One,
Oh,
whereas it
okay.
wasn't quite like I could see the frame rate dropping every once in a while on the
Hmm.
PS3, and that's sort of why I switched.
All
All
right.
right, Carl now has his dual SVS subwoofers. He's got one PC 12 Plus, which is a cylinder, and
Hmm.
it's an older one, and a PC 13 Ultra. Yeah, and his Denon AVR X72W 7200WA, and he's loving the sound. Of course
As
you are,
well
sir.
you should, because man, some nice subs and a flagship Denon receiver.
Yeah.
Nice gear.
He first wanted to ask why Rob had to send in his AVR X7200 to Denon. I know
Because
why. I'll let you
mine
say.
began its life as an X7200W.
W.
It came out in 2014 and it began its life as a W. Now, the W version did not have HDCP 2.2. It did not have HDMI 2.0A, and it was not going to be upgraded to decode DTS-X. But if you send it in for Denon, they will upgrade it for free to the WA model, which has all of those things. So
Yay.
that's why it got sent in. And I'm still
Waiting.
waiting for it.
They're in no big rush to give you something for free. Shockingly enough.
Ah, yeah, apparently. They must be waiting for parts or have a tremendous backlog, which is also possible
Yeah.
because literally everyone who bought an X7200W or an Marantz AV8802 last year is sending it in because free upgrade to all the stuff that we want. So, yeah,
I'm afraid that I did not. Oh, yeah, I did. Here we go. Is this
gotta
it right here?
gotta
I'm
get
sorry.
those letter A's on the end. That's
Yeah,
what's
you gotta
gotta
get.
happen.
You have all the letters. All right. So he sent in some screenshots of some of his manual settings he adjusted after running Odyssey Multi QXT32 auto setup, and he'd like us to give them a once over.
Sure.
Now, I'm gonna look at them. So let me see
All
if I
right.
can read them and out to the people's. Uh, yeah, this is gonna be a thing, isn't it? Are you gonna open? You're not gonna open. You're just
I
gonna
can
sit
do it
there.
for you if
I hate my computer with such a burning passion that it really. Uh, if my
good
computer was
times.
a movie, it would be that Repo movie. It would be inexplicably awful,
You
and
should
at the
just
same
use your
time,
LTE connection and open all of these things on your phone. That would go faster. You know?
my phone's like 3 or 4 or 5 Nexus generations ago. It's like
Oh yeah.
coughing and wheezing. It's not doing anything fast, dude. All right, so let's see what we got here. I think I've got it set up now. The first one he has his speaker slash bass. He's
Hmm.
got a subwoofer mode, it's LFE plus main, and it's LPF for LFE set at 80 hertz. I can already tell you that the LPF for LFE should not be at 80 hertz. You manually change that.
Hmm.
That should be set up at whatever the default is, which I believe is 120. Isn't it 120?
120. That is
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. Yeah. The LPF stands for low pass filter, meaning low frequencies are allowed through and anything above that frequency gets filtered out gradually, usually at 24 decibels per octave. Now, the reason it's a default at 120. We're always talking about 80 hertz crossovers, but not in this particular case.
This
This
is
is
not a crossover.
specifically the low pass filter just for the zero point 0.1 LFE channel. And one of the things about that LFE channel, it's its own separate little dedicated channel, and mixers can put sounds in there. And that is the one channel where they are allowed to make those sounds as loud as 115 decibels maximum. All the other channels max out at 105, but the LFE channel is allowed to go to 115.
Because
So if for
bass is
some
awesome.
reason they want a 100 hertz bass note to be played at 115 dB, they can't put that in even at full reference volume to any other channel, but they can stick it in the LFE channel. So they set the high cutoff for the LFE channel specifically at 120 hertz. So you should leave it alone. I don't know why they even let you change it.
They shouldn't let you change it.
They really
Now, the
shouldn't.
subwoofer mode, the LFE plus main.
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember how this works on Denon's because it's a little different for
Yeah,
all of them. But
I
doesn't
know.
this mean that the LFE and no, the LFE goes to the subwoofers and the mains. Is that how it goes? I
That
always
is
get this
one of the ways, but I don't think so because he has manually set all of his speakers to small, which is
right.
exactly what you should do.
Yes. Well, I haven't gotten to that part yet. It is small.
So I think I don't even know what this is doing, to be honest, when all of your
It might
speakers are
not
set
do
to
anything because
small.
there's nothing set to large. But if it was set to
Yeah.
large, I think that your speakers up front would be getting the LFE channel as well. I thought that's how it worked.
Yeah.
And you don't want that.
No.
You don't want that.
The bottom line is it should just be set to LFE.
Yes,
That's
what
what it
you
should be set to.
Yes.
Which is usually the default as well.
Right. So he's got his settings for 2-channel playback. His front says small, subwoofer says yes, subwoofer mode is LFE, crossover at 80, and the distances.
And levels.
Except, what speakers does this dude have? Because they are set. They must be really efficient.
He's got some electrostats.
Oh, so is he using an amplifier then? Or
I don't
he's not?
know.
Why is the level so low? Because it's -11 and -12 dB
Is
on
that
the
a
front,
negative
left,
or
and right.
is that a plus symbol? Man, it's small on my screen.
Oh, you know what? You might be right.
I think it's a
think
plus
that is a
symbol.
plus. Oh, so yes, you need an amp. I would look
Because you're
at
not
an amp.
sitting that far away. I mean, if that's what actually
Yeah.
came out, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be needing to boost the output to your front, left, and right channels by 11
I
and
would be
12
willing to
decibels,
bet that
respectively.
plus 12 dB is it. That is as high as it goes.
That's
I
true.
would be willing to bet that plus 12 dB is it, which means that it might actually not be loud enough.
Yeah.
So you're basically pushing that amp as hard as it can go in order to reach whatever, 75 dB, whatever the thing is.
Speaking of not loud enough, for some reason your voice just got real quiet, Tom.
All right, hold on a second.
All right, I'll move on to the next one. We mentioned all his speaker crossovers. He's set all of his speakers to small and the crossovers for all of the channels to 80 hertz, which is certainly a great. I can't quite tell. But basically, none of the other settings look odd or out of place at all. All speakers should be set to small. Setting them all to an 80 hertz crossover to begin with, certainly a great idea. Only change it if you want to get really anal about things and play a full bass sweep through each speaker one at a time, and you detect some kind of non-smooth transition from that one speaker into your pair of subs. Now your voice sounds good. But it almost always works at 80 hertz, so you're probably good to go. And I'm fairly certain Odyssey didn't set them all to 80 hertz. Or
no,
not
they
Odyssey.
wouldn't
I have to say Denon is the one who sets that. But based on Odyssey's measurements, I highly doubt Denon set them all to small and 80 hertz. So those are good changes manually. So really, it's only that first one, the bass speaker setup thing, which was obviously manually changed after the fact. Just put it back to 120 for the low-pass filter for LFE.
So he's got Atmos, right? Because he said everything is small, with the front small, the center at small, 2 subwoofers, small surround backs, front wides, top front set to small, and top rear is set to small.
Yeah.
So I thought we said that top rears were not needed if you had surround backs. I thought we said that.
Well, I mean, if that's what you have, like if that is where you have positioned your speakers and they fall within the elevation angles that are outlined, actually quite nicely in the Denon manual, they have by far the clearest diagram of where you're actually putting these speakers. So if that is where your speakers are, then that is what you should label them so that the sounds created by the Atmos renderer go to the correct locations in your room. Yeah, I'm just saying that, like, especially the rear heights, those are the ones that are for sure redundant with your surround backs. The top rears can be okay. Like, if your surround backs are quite a ways behind you, because you have that amount of space behind your seats, and then your top rears are just slightly behind you and directly overhead, that can still be totally cool. So
yeah. Okay.
It's just making sure the name fits the location, and you're allowed to do that. Change the name to what fits the location of where you've actually put the speakers in your room.
Right. Okay. Let's see here. I'm now lost. No, I know. I'm looking at I'm on a different screen. All right, here we go. Yes, we went through all that. Mike, he has an Energy XLC center, which has a blown tweeter. What should he do? And he says the garbage is fine. It took me a while to parse that, but what he means is if we say throw it away, he'll throw it away.
He's okay with that.
Okay, so you can do research. You can spend some time, Mike, and try to figure out if there is a drop-in replacement. You'll also
Mm-hmm.
see how hard it'll be. Okay, the way the center channel is, it's really bizarre. It's got the MTM design, which means a mid-range on one side, the mid-range on the other side. In the middle, there's a tweeter. But the tweeter
Mm-hmm.
is actually in what looks like a big plastic housing, which is
Yeah.
raised like a half an inch off the front of the speaker. Really kind of odd design. Looks like it's more of an aesthetic thing than anything to do with sonics. Though I'm sure the marketing people came up with all sorts of BS ways why it helped sonically.
Well, Energy doesn't make any speakers that still use that design, so
That should tell you
maybe
something right there.
maybe that wasn't the best choice.
So you can take some time and look at this. I think it's probably going to be more trouble than it's worth, and you're just going to want to go ahead and get yourself a different center channel.
Just
And
sell it on eBay for parts.
just be honest up front, man. Just let
Yeah.
people know that tweeter's blown.
Selling as is, tweeter is blown. Because I mean, this is a long discontinued model, so you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to just go to Energy and get it fixed through
Yeah.
them. They probably don't even have the parts. It looks like just removing the tweeter is going to be at least somewhat of a hassle because of that weird plastic covering over it. It might not be.
You can
It
never
might
tell
just
till you
pop
get
off.
you can never tell till you get your hands on them. I've had a couple
Yeah.
of speakers that come in that look awful, and then it's just like when you get up close, you realize it's just like a plastic ring, and you pop that off, or a rubber ring, you pop that up, and the screws underneath, and the whole thing comes apart. Or there's a couple things in the back, and boom, it's done. So you never really know. But that being said, I have a feeling that it's just probably more trouble than it's worth. The
I
second
agree.
question is, can bedding foam or heavy blankets or something similar work as sound absorbers?
Yes.
Not well, your sister can work as a sound absorber, but they not necessarily the most efficient type of sound absorber. They all absorb sound. Not so much for music or movies, but for privacy. It's as if he's talking low in his room, the occupant in the room far down the hall can hear me. What can he put, or will it matter to put anything up on the hallway walls that will help this? Dude, chances are it ain't the hallway walls. It's the AC. It's some
Could be.
vent in your room that's conveying this. So go to that room where the person's complaining, if you can. I mean, don't break into somebody's house. That would be weird. But if somebody's complaining about it and it's you have access to it, try to figure out where the sound's coming from and see whether or not it's actually coming down the hall.
Yeah. I guess neither of these rooms have doors on them, because
One would think that you would close the door and
Close
this
the
problem
door.
would be solved. And
but perhaps closing the door does not fix the problem, and that's maybe why he's asking. In which case, that is a flanking noise problem. That sound is transmitting, like Tom is saying, possibly through your ducts or through some other air path if you have doors in the way. Because absorbing sound with insulation, which is what do-it-yourself sound absorption products are made out of, or just heavy blankets or any type of foam or whatever.
Yeah.
Big fluffy stuff. That is not the same as soundproofing, which is preventing the transmission of sound from place to place. Now, the one little bit of caveat to that is if what is happening is you have hard floor, hard flat walls, glass down this hallway, and the sound is literally just reverberating down the hall, which can happen, then yes, putting some type of absorption in there will stop that sound from just ringing around the hallway and essentially just acting like a big resonance tube, because
Right.
that can happen. So you can damp that type of thing, but if both doors are open, they're still going to hear you. It might not be as loud and bothersome if you've reduced the ringing of the sound in the hallway, but they're still going to hear you because you have to block the sound to stop them from hearing you. But you can reduce it by absorbing it a little bit. But it's
Yeah.
If you're thinking what you're going to do is you've got a theater and you're in an apartment and you're going to prevent your neighbors hearing the sound through your walls by putting up sound absorbers, you are absolutely not. That is not soundproofing at all. You
Yeah.
are reducing the ringing time, so it might help a little bit in that way, but you are not soundproofing at all with absorbers.
Right. I mean, you can't, if you're thinking that you're going to throw this blanket or whatever foam, if you just lean a mattress up against your door and that's going to stop it, chances are it's not coming from there anyways.
Yeah.
So you need to really kind of do some investigation, figure out where it's coming from, and then just realize that nothing's going to help. But you could, without some major things. But if it is the fact that it's coming from the vent or something, then perhaps you can do something in that other room that will help. And we can talk about that if that's exactly the case.
Yeah.
Also, he wanted to share his success in making custom ear molds for in-ear monitors using friendly plastic. It's a low melting point jewelry plastic.
Hmm.
So how low is the melting point? Like how hot does it have to get?
I am not absolutely sure. I was just kind of
Yeah.
looking at it a little bit. It's sometimes called polymorph or instamorph,
Yeah.
are sort of the more generic names for this stuff.
I've seen a lot of
I don't know.
motorcyclists, and what they do is they get like this sort of it's almost like blue tack. I'm sure it's not sticky like blue tack, but it's like kind of a putty, and they put
Hmm.
that around, and then like it molds to your whole ear, and then they let it dry, and they use that. Uh, not their whole ear, but they put it, pack it in there, and that way you get this nice kind of flush
Yeah.
instead of but this seems hey, if he's had success doing it, I think that's fantastic. I would like to maybe you need to write a post, dude, and let us know how this thing works, because it sounds like what he's doing is he's somehow getting it hot and then shoving it in his ears real quick, and then bringing it back out, and then like using this like a drill press or something, or maybe a Dremel
Hmm.
to drill a little hole in there, and
Yep.
that all sounds like you're just. And he's got some RHA headphones, which I believe are the ones I have, and
Yep.
they're pretty decent little headphones too. So it's really great. I would love to learn more about this.
So it says the pellets melt in 150 to 160 Fahrenheit degree water.
Yeah, I don't want to put that in my ear.
So,
So how does he
basically
get that?
boiling water. It's more or less what you're
Well,
looking at.
almost not quite.
Not
That's really
quite,
hot
but
water. Yeah,
yeah.
that's, I mean, at 150. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 150 to 160 is what they're saying.
Yeah, that's even like it's even hotter than the hot tub, so that's pretty
Yeah.
warm.
Well, I mean, maybe he just gets it soft, lets it cool just a little bit,
And then molds it.
molds it
Yeah.
into his ear. I mean, the alternative to this is obviously much more expensive,
Yeah.
which is going to your audiologist, getting a custom ear mold made, and having custom ear tips manufactured for you, which you can absolutely do, right? Liz's husband got that done, right? Will
Yep.
got that done.
Yep. Will cut
He
that.
loves them. He put them on some Eddie Modic in-ear monitors, and he loves it.
Yeah.
But it's
He's a
way more
big fan.
expensive than this, so if you're willing, I mean, I would have the most difficulty with drilling the teeny tiny little hole to put there's the little stalk that the regular ear tips just fit over on your in-ear monitors. So you have to get the size just right in this polymorph stuff. But cool project if you're up for it.
There you go. It's instructable waiting to happen. Lastly, he's always been curious about surround sound. He's talking about surround sound decoders that take stereo or something else and
And yeah,
turn it
up
into surround sound.
mixers, yeah.
And considered writing in about it. And a couple of episodes ago, we discussed it. Ta-da! However, could we explain a bit more deeply? Like, how is it possible for upmixes of non-surround recordings to sound as though positioning was present in the original mix? Is it done with frequency, phase, etc.? Can we explain what phase is? Okay. Well, there's algorithms that these guys have been working on, and gals have been working on for a really long time, that I think one of the major things they look at is phase,
Mm-hmm.
because phase tells us a lot about where something is in the two-dimensional or even three-dimensional space. Okay, when the mixing is done, phase. Let's take your two speakers, right? Your left and right speakers only. We're only talking about your two speakers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if the speakers are firing 100% in phase, boom, 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 the drivers are going in and out at the exact same moment. The
Right.
exact same moment. Okay. What that does is gives you a very clear center image. And it sounds like the sound is coming from between the two speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Once you vary one of those, that changes that center image to being from where it is to moving from one side to the other. That's how, in fact, I think Queen was one of the first bands that did this on a really regular basis, and really sort of pioneered it, was doing these left-right pans. That
Mm-hmm.
was almost unheard of. And there's other bands that have done it where the pans are not just supposed to go left, right, but front, back as well.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about that Chomsky's, Dr. Chomsky's, or whatever it is, ultimate headphone disc. Though that phase is designed, and basically all they do is they take the microphone and they put it in the place where actually
Mm-hmm.
they took two microphones in the ears of the dummy thing, and they walk around it, and naturally the sound that's closest to you gets to your left ear. I'd say it's on your left side. It gets your
Mm-hmm.
left ear first. With it on the other side, it gets there. Takes longer to get there. Why? Well, your head's in the way. It's got to bounce around. All this other stuff. All that information your brain is used to processing into a three-dimensional, or at least within a single plane, idea of where things are coming from. Well, all you have to do is know the mathematics behind that, and the algorithm for the different surround up mixer says, "Hey, okay, well, I know if a sound is supposed to be, if it's coming from out of the left speaker, this much speaker supposed to really be kind of over here, so I'll put it in this other speaker over here, or mostly in that other speaker, or that sort of thing." And I think volume also makes a big difference in type. So like when the music hits, they know the music is coming from all around, so that's going to go in all the speakers and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different little tricks that they use, but phase is a big part of how they put those sounds into different speakers.
Yeah, it's really a matter of comparing the left and the right speaker, because of course those can be analyzed separately, and then you can overlay them on top of one another and see where are they exactly the same and where are they slightly different. So these algorithms that we're talking about, they're all attached to filters, and they're attached to filters that either work in time or in amplitude. And so you're basically gating down the signal until you can look at one little chunk of it and just analyze the difference between the left and the right speaker. So if the two speakers are playing the exact same sound, but the left speaker is just a little bit louder than the right speaker, but in every other way they're identical, then that's just going to be your balance between left and right. That's your hard panning left and right, moving the sound left to right in front of you. But when you alter the phase between two identical sounds, so if your left speaker was 180 degrees completely opposite to the right speaker, they are 180 degrees out of phase. That makes the sound seem to come from like everywhere. Instead of having any focus whatsoever, it is completely an out of focus sound. And if you just manipulate the phase just right, you can sort of make it seem like it's coming from behind you or beside you or above you. It's those types of things. So that's really what they're doing. They're gating down the signal until they're looking at just a little chunk of it, and then they're saying, what's the difference between the left and the right channel? Is it just a difference in amplitude? Is there no difference at all? In which case we know to put it into the center speaker. Or is it just a difference in level, in which case we know to move it to the left and right? Or is it a difference in phase, in which case we know to move it into the surround channels because that's moving it from front to back? So that's the basics of how they're doing it. Now, of course, different amounts of gating, different algorithms to choose how much to filter that sound out of its original channel and put it into another one.
Yeah.
Those are all choices, but that's what they're looking at in the actual signal to determine how to move it around to different channels from where it was originally. And it's very successful.
It does a pretty good job. I still don't use it, but it does a pretty good job. Jonathan wants to know where we stand on soap opera effect.
It's bad. I hate it. Go away.
Okay. I have I've never really experienced it in any great extent in my own home, because I've never had anything that you did it. Yeah, I've seen it before. I've experienced it, and I think the worst part is when you turn it on and there's sports on or something like that, and it starts going bonkers, right? It goes absolutely insane.
And when it's turned up really high, and
yeah,
the football
really
turns into about 8 footballs as it's thrown across the field.
It's like the $6 Million Man. So anyways, he finds that without using at least a little frame interpolation, that sports are unwatchable.
Wow.
I think he's probably got a bit of a point here, to be honest with you. If you've got like a not great LCD, okay, so we should explain. Soap opera effect comes from this frame interpolation where, essentially the way that LCDs work is, well, if you think of it this way, the way that plasmas and CRTs and all this other stuff works is it flashes at you, right? So there's just a flash of an image and it goes away. So there's like, it happens so fast, that it's mostly black, or there's mostly not a lot of picture. So it's mostly black. You just get this flash of this picture, and your eye catches that and goes, okay, well, that's that. And it says the next flash and says, okay, well, between those two things, your brain interpolates what happens. If it's flashing at you fast enough, well, then it looks like absolutely smooth motion. We're 100% okay with that. The problem with LCDs is that they don't flash. They turn on, they turn off, they turn on, they turn off, and they turn on and turn off. And what that gives you is this sort of a more jerky motion. You're going to see people are have noticed that it's pretty easy if you point out, have noticed that how that effect is pretty unpleasant. So what they tried to do is they tried to say, okay, well, we can't do that. So what we'll do is we'll take it, we'll put the picture up there more than once, or
Mm-hmm.
we'll put a picture up there and then we'll put a black image and then we'll put another picture and then black
Mm-hmm.
image. But the problem is that there's always that change time. It's not that instantaneous flash, and that's what LCD has been trying to sort of overcome, and that was like the big downside. Now, they've done a pretty good job of it, I gotta say. They've done a pretty good job of it overall. But when you turn on these, remember it was 120 hertz, it's
Mm-hmm.
240 hertz,
Yeah.
480 hertz. It just got ridiculous, and then people stopped using it because they hated it. But when it's kind of a still image or not that much motion, you turn it up really high, it's like everything gets glossy almost,
Mm-hmm.
and it has that sort of like there's no shadow. It doesn't really look right. It looks kind of plastic, and that soap opera effect is what he's referring to.
Yeah, there's a little bit more to it as well, which is the whole frame rate issue, which is that if
Mhm.
you're watching a movie or a primetime TV show, it was shot at 24 frames a second, or specifically 23.976 frames a
That's
second,
something
right?
like that.
Yeah, I think that's the number. But that's the number of frames it was shot at. Now, your LCD TV is refreshing. It's showing you a new image these days, usually 120 times a second. So what you could do is just show each of those 24 frames 5 times in a row. You show the first one 5 times, second one 5 times, so on and so forth. Or you, like just Tom just said, you show it, then you show black, then you show it again, then you show black, then you show it again, and then you show the second frame, and you do that with black in between. But with frame interpolation, what they're doing is they're saying, okay, well, here's the first frame, and here's the second frame, and we have enough time to show 4 more frames in between those two things.
So
What shall we do?
so we'll use all of this intel inside that's in here to
Uh-huh.
try to figure out what happened, where the pixels would have been between all these
Yep.
places.
So they're comparing at least 2 pixels. Sometimes they're comparing, or 2 frames, or sometimes they're comparing 3 frames. And they're saying, well, what stayed the same from frame 1 to frame 2 and what changed? And if it changed, and we can reasonably guess, again, the football example, the football is being thrown down the field. Well, it started in frame 1 over here on the left, and then in frame 2, it's like in the middle of the screen because that's how fast the ball was going. We can reasonably interpolate that there should have been 4 more spots in between those 2 spots where the football would have been, and we'll create those. We'll make them up. That's what they're trying to do with frame interpolation. So on sports, on football, on hockey, or whatever, it looks more like real life if it's done well. If you don't end up with what they sometimes call the triple ball effect that I alluded to, which is it made up extra frames, but it did it kind of wrong, so you end up seeing 3 footballs simultaneously instead of just one smoothly moving. If it does it well, it looks really smooth and it looks very much like real life, and it's not objectionable because we're used to watching sports in real life. But when you see a movie altered that way, it has this odd look to it as though it was shot on video. And the reason I call it the soap opera effect is because soap operas for a long time have been shot on video cameras, not on film and not on new 24 frames per second digital cameras. They're just shot on regular, like steady, like home handy cams sometimes is what soap operas were
So
shot
they're
on.
shot at 60
At
frames.
30 or 60 frames a second. And it gives it a very different look to the motion. So some people argue that what we got used to with the 24 frames per second look of film, because that's what it started with, was film. And they did it basically to save money because the fewer frames you could use, that was less film you were shoving through the camera.
Crank it. You had to crank that thing back in the day. It's hard
animation,
to crank it at 60
yeah,
when you can crank it at
animation was
24.
animation was done at 12, right? All the old Disney films were done at 12 frames a second because you only had to draw 12 frames a second then.
They drew every single thing every single time. That was before
That's right.
Era figured out that you could just draw the background and then the thing that was going to move.
Repeat it.
The thing that's going to move, you draw that and that's it. You leave everything else alone.
So a lot of people argue that since we got used to 24 frames a second, we got used to something that looks actually very artificial and not at all like real life. But we have like over 100-year history of seeing things that way now, that to us, that is the cinema look. That is the primetime TV look. And when you see that stuff changed into 30 or 60 frames per second, it looks like a home video, right? It looks like you shot it on your handy cam from your old home video, and it looks a bit weird. So I don't like it, but then again, I've been watching movies and TV shows for so long that I very much got used to the 24 frames per second look of movies and TV. So it doesn't make me right, but I still don't like the soap opera effect at all.
Anyway, so he's saying that without a little bit of that on, that
Mm-hmm.
he finds sports unwatchable, and when watching movies that he's very familiar with, it is noticeable and in some cases unpleasant, but
Mm-hmm.
really isn't a problem on content he's never seen before. So how much is dependent on what we're used to? Well, I think you've nailed it right there. It is
Yeah.
very dependent on what we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen it before, you're going to say that looks different. Now, what you didn't say, well, you did say in some places unpleasant, but what's really, is it really unpleasant, or is it just different? Because I think what Rob's saying is that it's different and I don't like it and get off my lawn. Basically, is what Rob is saying.
It weirds me out when I see it. It
It's
looks weird.
fine.
It looks like everything got
You
sped
and
up
all the
just a
people who didn't
little
like The
bit.
Hobbit because it was in 48.
That's right.
It was shot in 48 frames per second.
And that
Are
looked weird too.
I'm not saying that it didn't. I am saying that I don't necessarily think it's not better. Now, I haven't
Hmm.
seen it. I haven't seen any of the Hobbit
Nah.
movies because, oh my God, I'm not going to see any of the Hobbit movies. Are you kidding me? I don't have that much
I'm
time.
telling you,
The thought
when it
of trying to watch those movies makes me sick to my stomach.
when it
It's
first
too
came
much.
on, I saw it in the theater in the 48 frames per second. I thought something was wrong. Like that was my initial impression was, what? Like, what is wrong with this video? It looked like it had been sped up to like 1.5 times. That's what everything looked like. It looked so darn weird. But then I kind of got used to it, and then it kind of looked like I was watching a play.
Yeah. And I kind
So
of imagine that's what it's supposed to be. And
that's right.
I think that is better than watching. I think it should look more live. If we, especially you, Rob, who's always like, "Oh, I gotta have matched speakers hanging from my ceiling, even though
Yup.
they're $300,000 a piece." You should be the one that advocating for 48 frames per second because it looks like real life, and you're like, "Oh, it looks too real. Don't like it." Yeah.
I
So
know.
I don't agree with that.
It is entirely what I have gotten used to, and
Yes.
therefore it looks different, and therefore my first reaction to it is that looks weird.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Anyways, so Jonathan, if you like it, I 100% support you, and Rob's a weirdo. So I really don't think. I think Rob's in the norm, to be honest with you. I think, and
A lot of people notice it and are like, that looks weird. So
John S. He previously promised to send pictures of the entertainment center he built himself out of old pallet wood. This must have been answered in the podcast I was not on because I did
Yes.
not know that this was
That's
a
right.
thing. But he sent us pictures of this thing, and I would never have guessed this. First of all, he stained it, so it looks.
Mhm.
It's not pallets stacked on top of each other. He broke the pallets apart
Yeah.
and built them into furniture,
And clearly
it looks,
like sanded it and
yeah,
finished it, and yeah.
very nice. Very nice. You can pull your speakers forward, but very nice. Very nice. He says the grate on the front allows him to put his HSU VT F3 Mark V directly beneath his center speaker.
Okay.
So it's inside that thing.
It's inside there. It's shoving its sound out through the slats of this wooden grate that he's built there.
And he's loving his Ascend Acoustic Sierra 2 speakers, which he needs to pull forward a little bit, which he thinks sound even clearer than the flagship Kef speakers that he auditioned. He's excited that he's been able to understand whispered dialogue without needing to rewind or have to hear having to hear what did he say? I'm guessing that's the wife or somebody
Yep,
saying
that's
that.
right. What is
And then the very next scene can crush the room with bass from the VTF3. So Mark 5 or whatever it is.
Yep.
Looks really good. I'm saying scoot your speakers forward a little bit because they're kind of like far, in the middle of the little stand, and frankly, your woofer is firing out and the sound's bouncing off the bottom of the thing. Just get forward so that your woofer.
That is true. And John, I appreciate the My Little Pony image on your TV, so thank you.
I think you did that just for him. I hope you did that just for him, and that was net. And what is that green thing that's in there? Do you see the green thing that's down there? Are you looking at this picture right now?
Green
There's a
thing.
green
Oh,
thing.
there's a little figurine.
Yeah, what is that? I don't know what that
I
is.
am not certain. Does
That is
this
very odd.
picture embiggen if I click on it?
It doesn't on the email that I'm
This
looking
is
at. And there's
great
a
podcast for no
different
one who's watching the video.
There's a different green figurine on the other side on that second picture, so I don't
That's
know what's
right.
going on here.
He's down with the green figurines.
He is down with the green. John streams a lot of Pandora, the free version, me and you both, buddy, over his Roku 3 in his theater, but doesn't really like how compressed it sounds. Ha ha! I bet you really don't not like it now that you get the Sierra 2s.
Ah,
That's for sure.
you can hear it. Yeah, it is.
Holy
detectable.
moly. Yes, it sounds like big bunches of crap on good speakers. It sounds just fine in the car. Thank you very much. Anyways, he's read that it streams at 128.
That's correct.
Is that right? I thought it was
It
96.
is correct. No, it's 128 is what it can go up to because it is dynamic. It will
okay.
depend on your internet connection, but it can go up to 128 on the free version. But that's where it tops out.
And he asks if the premium version offers a higher bit rate.
It does
And
192.
it does. That's right.
Goes to
And what
192.
services do we use for streaming music? I have actually just discussed this thing with my wife this week because she's like, oh, your son wanted to hear this song, so we looked it up on the internet, and then we wanted to hear it, and he downloaded the app and this, and we had to sign up for an account. I'm like, whoa, what? What's going on? And she's like, well, he wanted to hear the song and stuff, and I thought, I'm like, oh, Jesus. You people need to stop touching the buttons on the computers when I'm not here. Just step away. All right? She goes, well, which ones should we use? I'm like, okay.
YouTube.
Yeah, well, that would have been the best thing to do. But frankly, I'm like, okay. We got my oldest son. This is my oldest son. He's in sixth grade. He's 12 years old. It's kind of old enough where I really don't care if he hears things that my parents would be shocked that I was letting him hear. I mean, I don't want him listening to gangster rap or anything that's really bad. But if he hears a couple of bad words, I'm not going to care because, frankly, he's already heard them from me. So but at the same time, I don't want to give him carte blanche to create a Pandora station based on NWA. You know what I mean? I don't want that to be a thing to happen.
Fair enough.
So I kind of looked into it, and I personally use almost exclusively Pandora for my casual listening. And if I'm interested in something that sounds a little bit better, and I have the time to put together a good playlist, because the radio stations that suck, Spotify has pretty good bit rates, I think, if I remember correctly.
256 and 320 if you go the paid version.
I don't do the paid version. And I like Spotify quite a bit. It's just kind of a pain. But there are a lot of people out there that are making up their own playlists. Like, I subscribed to this playlist, and simply because I wanted to see what it was like industrial music. I'm not even really sure what that is. And most of it's fairly terrible. But the dude that curates that list never stops adding stuff to it. Like, I get every couple of days, at the very least, I get an email that he's added some more songs to that thing. That guy does not play. And so on Spotify, if you can find somebody that is making a list of things that you like, it's pretty easy to do that. It's pretty well supported that way. But for the kids, I am looking into iHeartRadio, which is kind of Pandora-esque, but it gives you the ability to, and Pandora, you can do this too. You can lock it down for explicit lyrics and stuff like that. Okay. But iHeartRadio is the same way, and I don't have to give him access to my thing, and I don't have to sign. He's already signed up for that. That was the thing they ended up signing up for, was iHeartRadio. Thing is that with iHeartRadio, it sort of allows you to make your own playlist if you want to, like Spotify, unless you lock it down to the no explicit lyrics, and then it doesn't.
Okay. Well, I'm in Canada, so I still don't have Pandora. Thanks for years later. They can't sort that out. Anyway, I don't stream a lot of music. I really don't. So my streaming music is pretty much YouTube, like I mentioned, and iTunes Radio.
I haven't used iTunes Radio.
Not iTunes, TuneIn Radio.
Oh, TuneIn Radio. Okay.
Yeah, TuneIn Radio, which is, it's just rebroadcasting radio stations over the internet. It is streaming it, so I guess it counts as streaming. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much. I use TuneIn Radio.
Commercials, though, don't you? When you get that, you get the commercials.
It's radio stations. It's exactly what is on the radio station.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
I tried like the RDO and what's the other one? Not Mog, something like that, though, right?
At one point, yeah.
Yeah, I tried that. I couldn't get into it. Pandora's easy. I think Pandora does a fairly good job. Rhapsody, I don't like. Fairly good job of putting together stations for you and constantly sort of challenging you to like or dislike things. It's pretty easy to lock yourself into something, and then you never plays anything new for a really long time. So what I've started doing with Pandora, the key to Pandora is to hear something new that you like, add that person, that artist or band, as a seed, and see what pops up, and you might end up finding out that you do like not only that music but the music like that. Or this is what happened to me recently. I added an artist and went, man, this is all crap, except for that guy, which sounds pretty good, and I kicked off the one and added the new one, and that has gotten me into some more music that I like. The problem with Pandora, in my experience, other than the bit rate, is that it doesn't do a mix. You think, okay, if everything you like is like all hairband from the 80s, within 5 different hair bands, you're basically, you're always going to hear something like that. Okay. But if you like different types of music
Mm-hmm.
and you say, okay, I'm going to have this band, which is a country band, and this band, which is a ska band, and this band, which is a rap band, you'll quickly identify that what Pandora does is it plays you 3 or 4 songs from that comes from one seed, 3 or 4 songs from a different seed, 3 or 4 songs from a different seed. And if you start skipping songs, it'll go to a different seed because apparently you're not in the mood for that music right there. It doesn't sort of like bounce back and forth. So you go, oh, well, I'll get one from this seed over here, over there, that sort of thing.
Not
It's
a lot of
more
mixing it up.
linear. Yeah. I wish they would mix it up a little bit more, but they do a pretty good job of everything else. And this, like I said, the Spotify radio where you pick a song to seed is garbage. I've never liked that. So there you go. There's your answer. Overly long, and my computer's frozen. All right.
Again.
William.
Yes. This was the one that stumped us, and I'm not sure that this will.
No, wait, hold on. I scrolled, and then my computer caught up, and then it scrolled me right off the screen. All right, William wants to clarify that this is from last week, the stumper wants to clarify that his base issue occurs with HBO Go or Netflix on the Apple TV and Roku 3 on any content with low base. Daredevil is just a particularly noticeable example. Right?
Yeah.
The heavier the base, the worse it is. Is there a compression codec that might be shared between Netflix and HBO Go on these two devices?
I don't know. I don't know. We didn't hear back if he tried
questions.
we didn't hear back if he tried the suggestion of playing local content through the Apple TV and local content through the Roku 3, because I really want to find out if you're getting the same problem playing local content, you just put it on a USB thumb drive, plug it into the side of the Roku 3 and play it through the built-in media player.
Yeah.
If this still happens, then it's a hardware problem. Then we know that. But if this is only the fact is, clearly if he's using an Apple TV, he's probably using it for more than just HBO Go and Netflix, right? Like, I'd be a little surprised if those are the only two things he ever uses his Apple TV for. So the fact that he says it happens on HBO Go and it happens on Netflix, but he doesn't mention that it happens like just playing his iTunes library over his Apple TV or something, makes me think it has something to do with it being a streaming service and not just hardware. But still want to check. Yeah.
It's weird.
It is weird.
Anyways, he's sure that we can appreciate the sadness of having to nearly turn off his PC 13 Ultra to avoid this problem.
Yeah, that's no way.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. Run the calibration again. Just run the calibration again, just one last time.
I'm almost tempted to say, just as an experiment, find out what happens if you set. Oh, good grief! How are we going to do this? What does William have as his AV receiver? I can't remember.
I don't. You think I remember? It's not on there.
I don't know if this will work. The PC 13 Ultras, I don't think they have speaker wire inputs. I'm pretty darn sure they don't. Because I was going to suggest maybe saying you don't have subwoofers, like manually going in and saying subwoofers no, and then turning your front speakers to large, in which case the LFE channel now gets routed into the front left right speakers, and then having your subwoofers connected to those. But you would need pre-outs to make that work on your PC 13 Ultras.
What about this?
Like, if there's any way to just test that.
That's one. What about if you go back and you look at, like, sometimes on these receivers, you can, for each individual input, there's a setting that you can trim up or trim down speakers and subwoofers. Is it possible that with your Apple TV and your Roku 3, somebody at some point trimmed up the subwoofer to like max?
But he tried them on different inputs.
Oh, damn it. I hate this question. We have never been this stumped.
I know.
Never.
Well, I mean, we might have been. It's just
fire. We figured it out. His receiver caught on fire. We figured it out. It's video processor.
I don't know, man. I've got those two way out there. Well, the playing local content isn't so way out there, but there's the only remaining troubleshooting things I can think of. However, Andrew N weighing in on Facebook might have, he can keep you company.
Yeah, he says he's getting static and horrible noise playing almost any 5.1 content from Netflix using the app on his Nexus player. What does he have, that ball thing? The Nexus player, is that ball thing?
I don't know.
What is the Nexus player? Isn't
I
is
don't.
that isn't it that circular thing that nobody that you
Google
only got it if you
Nexus?
pre-ordered?
Maybe it was.
In which case, it's lack of support, dude. Anyway, switching to 2.0 gets rid of it, but of course that means no surround sound. He wants to know if anyone else is having the same problem. Here's your solution, sir. Switch it to 2.0 coming out of the device, and then
Uh-huh.
use the surround up mixer to fix it.
Yeah, but it's not
Uh,
discrete 5.1, right?
who cares? It's Netflix.
But
Shut up.
the point is he's having a problem with that particular service with 5.1 sound making horrible noises, which sounds kind of similar
I
to what's
told
been
you
going on for
last week
William.
we talked about this. I said that when I was watching some content that every once in a while the sync would get off.
Yeah.
That only ever happened with the Blacklist.
Huh.
Only ever happened. I saw it on the Blacklist, and much earlier in the year, it happened a couple of times with House of Cards. That's the only time it's ever happened. I've watched movie after movie after movie, TV show after TV show after TV show. The IT crowd it's going off of Netflix, so I rewatched the entirety of that when I was sick.
Mm-hmm.
Telling you, it's
I
just
mean,
those shows.
I have definitely had audio hiccups and glitches and not rightedness coming out of the Roku 3 that I've used. That I sometimes little pops and clicks happen once in a while. Sometimes it does have like a pretty harsh, like almost like it's clipping type of sound.
Yeah,
Like
I
I've had all those types of errors, and it's almost at random. So I suspect it's kind of a software hardware combination thing. I mean, it's this tiny little, very inexpensive, everything on one chip little player, and the
I'll be
software, because
willing
I
to
don't get
bet
those problems out of my Xbox One.
that that even though it's two different players and stuff like that, I think there's the possibility that he's just kind of in this weird world
Yeah.
where something happened inside these two devices that's causing this. I'm willing to bet it's hardware issue. It's a hardware issue.
Ah,
I
golly.
If I were an immoral and not a very good person, I would suggest buying new ones
Uh-huh.
and
And
seeing if
then
the new
putting the
ones
old
don't do
ones
it,
in the
and
box.
then return the old ones.
But they have serial numbers on them. They might catch on to that.
Just saying. I didn't say I was a smart person, but seriously, do you have a friend that has one of these devices?
Right. Yeah.
Try that.
Well, like he tried it with a freaking Roku stick, which is even far less powerful than a Roku 3, and it was all fine. That's
Yeah, it's
messed
gotta be
up.
the device, dude. It's gotta be hardware. I don't believe it's not hardware. It's hardware. It's gotta be.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
James just said, try. Is there a different way of getting sound output other than HDMI? So is there a
Nope.
fiber output? Any of that?
There is nothing else.
Oh, well.
Yeah. You got
Hardware.
That's it.
That's what I'm going with. All right, I don't live in the McMansion. Chris has got some things to say. First, he thanks us, mostly Rob, for his explanation of Atmos ceiling speaker positions. Mostly because I didn't understand the question. It really helped him to understand how an Atmos setup works. It also made him realize that side surround speakers need to be moved forward. The left side is not a problem, but there is a sliding glass door on the right wall. So in order for the right surround to not be blocked by his wife's head, he needs a very tall speaker stand or a wall mount. Is that part of it? No.
Well, not if it's a glass door. I don't know how you're going to wall
Does it
mount
go
to
floor to
that.
ceiling? Put it way up high. Aim it down. Anyways, so when looking for stands that can hold a 20-plus pound speaker, they all seem to top out at 3 feet or so. Are there any recommendations? I know.
Yep.
What is this that you have? Accessories.yorksville.com?
Yorkville, yeah. Well, I mean, Yorkville is just one of many brands, but that's the ones I've used, and they work just fine. Pro monitor stands. So go to something like Musician's Friend or Sweetwater or LA Music, or one of these places that sells like DJ outdoor gear, that type of stuff. Almost all of them do carry Yorkville, or they'll carry someone else whose products is very, very similar, and they have Pro monitor stands that are extendable. They're just rolled tube steel. They can hold 100-pound monitors if you want them to. I particularly like the SKS 500Bs because they come with quite a nice side clamping bracket on the top thing that will hold your speakers very, very stable, and it actually even lets you tilt them them a little bit. So if you want to put them
Yeah.
fair up high, but then tilt them just a little bit and be very sure that they'll be held still, I like those stands. Some people look at it because they have 5 sort of feet with casters on the bottom. So they're like, I don't want wheels. I don't want to wheel around. You can lock every single one of those 5 casters. Believe me, it will not move. So don't worry about that part. It's not going to roll away on you. Yeah, I like those.
Anyways, he knows the ceiling speakers in Atmos system need to be monopole, but do they need to be especially wide dispersion? No. If not especially, are you going to disagree?
Yeah, they don't. Well, they don't have to be monopole. It's not a complete 100% necessity.
Well, they generally are.
They generally are.
I haven't seen a single one that wasn't monopole.
Yeah, but I mean, Atmos
Anyways,
speakers.
if using narrow
Put a
dispersion
monopole up there.
speakers, should they be pointed straight down or aimed at the listener? Straight down.
Well,
Straight
eh,
down. Straight down.
uh,
Tell me one Atmos picture where the speaker was not faced straight down.
Golden Ears setup.
Whatever.
They did. Well,
I'm
Golden
talking
Ear.
about from one of
Yeah.
the manufacturers from Dolby. One picture from
Well,
Dolby where
I don't
the
think he's talking about upward firing.
no, I'm
He's
talking
talking.
about the ones that are on the ceiling. They're
Yeah, they're
always
in the
pointed
ceiling.
straight down.
Yeah, but you know, in Golden Ear's case, they use their folded ribbon tweeters, which are more directional. They're not like Dolby is saying. Ideally, your speakers would have 90-degree dispersion in every single direction, which is wide dispersion, and therefore you won't get the sort of hot spotting. So regardless of
I
where you
don't think
sit,
it's
you're
going to
getting
make
kind
that
of
much of a difference because they are
yeah,
rolling. They're doing their weird
they are.
roll
They're
off of all
processing
sorts
it.
of things, and they're
Yeah.
processing the crap out of it. So I really don't think I would worry about it. I'd put a regular speaker up there. I would not. I mean, I wouldn't buy a electrostat and put it up there.
Yeah, that would be
I
weird.
honestly would not use a ribbon tweeter either. Frankly, I think it's a terrible idea. But not that it necessarily would be. But I mean, it's, if you put some sort of wave guide on, it'd be fine. But yeah, it's just uh, most speakers I think would just be fine, especially anything that was meant to be put in a ceiling is
Mhm.
going to be fine because they're all wide dispersion.
Yeah.
So
But he might be hanging a regular speaker from the ceiling and saying, should I point it straight down or should I use one of those ceiling mount tilt jobby things to kind of aim it at the seating a bit?
I don't
So,
think so. I honestly don't think so. I
yeah.
wouldn't. I think the idea is that the sound's supposed to come from over there, and if it's pointed at you, it's going to become a little bit. To me, it's not meant. It's not doing what it's meant to do.
Hmm.
The processor, it knows it's over there and knows it's supposed to be pointed down, and yes, it's supposed
Mhm.
to have this particular dispersion. If it doesn't have as good a dispersion as it's supposed to have, when you calibrate it, it's going to change the volume to make
That's
sure
true.
that you get the volume that you're supposed to be getting, and it's not going to be pointed directly at you.
Mhm.
Uh, I would point it straight down.
Yeah, I can get on board with that.
All right. His theater has 2 ceiling heights because of ductwork. Will Odyssey deal with having the Atmos ceiling speakers at different heights?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not an issue.
No problem. It will do
That's
the same timing calculation that it
yeah.
does for any of the other speakers because it doesn't know that the distance from the microphone is in an upward direction. It just knows that it took a certain amount of time from when the signal was sent to when the signal arrived, and it does that calculation. It says, well, that means your speaker was this far away. So
Yep.
that's all it is.
Could you measure speaker dispersion by playing pink noise and measuring the level at various angles with an SPL meter? If so, which SPL meter would we recommend?
You can't really know
You need a
because
measurement microphone and a measurement
yeah.
thing, and basically you measure it on axis, and then we do like on axis maybe 15 degrees off, 30, 45 to one side, and then you do it to the other side, and that tells you what change you see in the
Frequency
in the
response.
frequency response
Yeah.
as you go to the side. Or just throwing this one out here,
Mhm.
put it in the middle of your room facing you, and then
Mhm.
scoot over on the couch as you're listening to stuff. Just see how the sound changes. Do that too.
Yeah, I mean, if it really is a matter of you just want to get a rough idea of how wide the even dispersion part of the speaker is, you can do that by ear. You don't need any equipment to do that. You
Absolutely.
just play pink noise, you start with yourself dead in front of it, completely on axis, and then just slowly move yourself to either side, and you will hear when the timbre of the sound changes. You will, I mean, it I have to warn you, it changes almost immediately as soon as you are very slightly off axis. But then there is usually a good portion that you can listen to where you'll get to a point, and it's interesting because some speakers have almost like a line. Like you get to this side of the line and it changes quite dramatically, and then you move back just like a couple inches and the sound changes. Some speakers are that way. Some are a very gradual change as you move off axis, and it's hard to tell where it's really changed. So it's an interesting experiment to do. If you're trying to measure it, you can't really do it with just an SPL meter and pink noise because the SPL meter does not discriminate between frequencies. If you're playing a 1 kilohertz sound and then you're playing a 2 kilohertz sound, those are an octave apart. The SPL meter is going to be like, well, if they're equally as loud, I'll give you the same reading. I don't care what the frequency is. Dispersion does matter about frequency because what's happening is as you move farther and farther to either side, the high frequencies start to tail off and get quieter and quieter. The SPL meter won't show you that. You need a microphone where you can see the frequency response.
And then you need a sweep. It has to play a sweep.
Yeah, a sweep. Yeah.
All right, Jay has found a high def digest article about hypersound clear.
Mm-hmm.
This is a speaker technology bought up by Turtle Beach. I think I remember when something like this came out on Kickstarter a while back. It creates extremely directional sound so that you can walk into and out of the path, quote unquote, path of sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's already been put in use in some store demos, kiosks, where you can hear the sound if you're standing right in front of the display, but you don't hear the sound anywhere else. In fact, they put the speakers on the ground, sort of angling up, and as you walk to the display, you'll hear the sound. And then when you walk away, it's like not there.
Yeah, because it's firing like up into the ceiling.
Yes. But now Turtle Beach is marketing it almost exclusively as a hearing loss product. It is meant to supplement and not replace an existing sound system. The person with a hearing loss has the hypersound clear speakers aimed directly at them until they can see their own reflection in the reflective surfaces of the flat speakers. That one person gets an extremely clear beam of sound that only they can hear.
Yep.
So basically, you would have a full surround sound system. The guy who reviewed this kind of described it really kind of silly, but the guy he's like, you could use, everybody else uses the TV speakers, and the hard of hearing people use these hypersound clear things. I'm like, why do they get it? Why do they get it? I want the expensive speakers why do I have to get the expensive? So basically, you have a full surround sound system or whatever it is, or 2-channel system, something decent, and you've got grandma who's always like, "What'd they say? Can we turn on the subtitles?" Like, we are not turning on the subtitles. Not a thing. Go to my parents' house; they're always on. Drives me nuts. Anyhow, so and they have decent speakers. Anyhow, so this idea is that they have their chair. I guess because old people always have their chair. And they're sitting in their chair, and you point these speakers directly at the chair. So it's not the full frequency response. It's not all of it. It's just the top end. It's just supposed to be meant for vocals, really. Just for the dialogue. And that points directly at the person. They get that sound, and it's not bothering you. It's like turning up the volume just on that, just for them, or headphones for them.
Yeah,
and
like
upside, well, another thing is, let me just ask you a question, Rob.
Yeah.
So the downside with headphones is they look over, they still try to have a conversation with you with the headphones on. They're yelling at you, right? And they can't hear what you're saying, stuff like that. This is the same thing, except you don't get the visual reminder that they're wearing headphones when they're doing it, right? Because the thing's beaming at them, and they're like, "This show is really good." Oh yeah, Grant, it's good. What? No, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. I can't hear you. This is great. I could really hear the dialogue. Yeah, I got it. Okay, can we just? I'm trying to hear. I can't hear that. Oh, that was hilarious. Did you hear that? No, I didn't hear that because you've been screaming at me the entire freaking thing.
And don't have a large dog who can walk in front of it with its tail.
That's right.
Yeah, no, my dad's hard of hearing, and he has hearing aids, which actually can connect to a Bluetooth signal.
Oh, that's nice.
One of the accessories for the hearing aids that he has is you get a little Bluetooth transmitter that you connect to just the analog audio output of any TV. And then it can send the signal directly to his hearing aids with a Bluetooth signal. Works really well, except exactly what you're saying. He's got the sound blaring inside of his ears in the hearing aids, and therefore if I try to talk to him, he is trying to read my lips. So any of these solutions, it's tough. But you know what? It's still nice to be able to enjoy TV and understand what the people are saying in one way or another. So this is another way where you don't have to have headphones on or hearing aids.
Yeah, and
And they
honestly,
sure look like electrostats. They
I,
really
I
look like
think
little electrostats.
they are is what basically they are. And it's great. I mean, I think these would be perfect for like an office situation.
Hmm.
You know, it doesn't stop your coworker from singing along with the music they're listening to that you can't hear. And if you're sitting right directly in the right path behind them, then you have to worry about that. But I think there's specific applications. I think for home theater, it's not going to be something that we're really going to be worried about until the audiophiles get a hold of it, and then they'll put little these tweeters on top of the thing, and
Oh yeah.
it's doing
But
180 hertz.
they could market this kind of like how Yamaha markets that feature of their digital sound projectors, where if it's in the bedroom setup, you can
Yeah.
have it where you can be watching TV in bed and not bother the person lying in bed next to you because the sound is so directional. You have to be in the
Plus, you
beam
can
of
always use
sound.
a couple extra mirrors in the bedroom.
That's right.
I just throw that out there. Thing.
That I don't know about if the whole point of the setup is that you aim them until you can see your own reflection. I'm like, but then I can see my own reflection. That's going to be
I'm
distracting.
distracted by
The
this
same
thing.
reason I don't like super glossy screens.
Dev bought a Yamaha RX V675. He saw an Audioholics YouTube video where Gene trashed many AV receiver models for adding more and more features while cheaping out on power. This is applied to the 675.
No more than any other receiver.
I don't agree with
Um,
that. He's been saying stuff like that for years, and he knows I don't agree with that.
well, I
But
mean, there's the examples of like last year in 2014
yeah,
when Onkyo released their new Atmos capable receivers, and their
yes,
top end one was a TX NR 3030. I think that, or it might have been, I don't know, whatever the model number was, but it had 11 amplifiers internal built in. It was the only one in the mass market that came out with 11 amplifiers actually built in to drive all the speakers itself without having to connect any external amps if you didn't want to. But the power supply didn't get any bigger.
right.
Um, it didn't gain any weight or anything like that. So yes, you have now just divided what used to drive 9 speakers, which was already more than it could really handle because it was the same power supply as what used to drive 7.
Yeah,
So they took the same power supply that used to drive 7 and now it's driving 11. And yes, you just divided it into that many more speakers. You have not increased the actual supply of power. But they did that instead of increasing the price. And they added a new feature, which was Atmos. So that was the compromise they made.
I
You
can't.
know,
These blanket statements that people like to make about, oh, if well, then again, I mean, I do blanket statements myself. I'm certainly guilty of this, but blanket statements that adding features is bad. Well, no, it's
mm,
not. You just have to balance it and make sure
yeah,
that what you're doing. And I'm think that we're seeing that with. I'm not so worried about Yamaha, Denon, and Marantz.
yeah,
They tend to, in Yamaha in particular, I think, has been very cognizant of how much power they're putting into their stuff, and they're not. I mean, the entry level models are always going to be, not underpowered, but they're not going to have tons of power. But then again, they usually only have 5 or 7 speakers they can power, anyways.
hmm,
So I'm not super worried about that for the most part. And frankly, even though you can complain about the fact that they're not adding more power to this Onkyo, you know, for the most part, the people who are buying these flagship things, they are either this was the best, this is the most expensive thing they bought, and everything else they bought is cheaper and therefore it doesn't need a lot of power, or they're already going to plan to buy an amp anyways. So why
right.
make them spend more money for a larger power supply?
No, I mean, there does seem to be this sort of ebb and flow to the AV receiver
Yeah.
market. The companies leapfrog each other all the time. So, I mean, like Gene pointed out, there was that the year before the Avantage line came out, Yamaha's receivers were crappy. They were
Uh,
crappy on like every front. They didn't have good amps. They didn't have all the features that everyone else had. Like they had some
so
crappy
did
models that year. And then the Avantage line came out the year after, and all was well again. So like what just happened with Onkyo their last year, now their newest models that came out, they're touting how we've upgraded the power supply. We've got new toroidal transformers, we've got larger capacitor banks, we've got greater output transistors. The price went up because it has to. You can't do all that stuff
yeah.
without the price going up. But they basically responded to the criticism by building a better product. So could this happen to Denon and Marantz and Yamaha in the future? Absolutely. They could make that choice at some point, and then there will be the ebb and flow to the market. The market will respond, and they'll respond in kind if they want to stay in business.
Yeah.
So, but getting back to the RX V675, I'm not. I mean, that was a $500 receiver, so it's not aiming to be a flagship at the onset, and
Right.
it is certainly not underpowered compared to all other $500 receivers out there. So you absolutely didn't get ripped off or anything like that in that choice, not at all.
Yeah. Second question: the receiver 110-volt power cord. He might use it. Need to use it in Asia with a 240-volt plug. With a standard converter affect performance in any way? Uh, yeah.
Yeah, you
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 don't want to
can't just put
you don't want
one.
to just plug it into a wall in Asia. Let's just
Yeah,
start with that. You
yeah,
do
because I mean
that,
they.
and you're going to have a bit of an issue, and the issue is going to be probably catastrophic failure and or fire.
Yeah, you don't want to just take the thing that turns your regular three-prong US style plug into the physical type of plug that fits into the wall socket. No, the internal transformer does need to be prepared that it's now going to be 240 volts coming in. There is, I mean, there was a global version of this that had a nice little switch on the back right below where the power cord goes in that let you switch between 110 and 240 volt, but unfortunately the US specific model doesn't have that nice little switch.
No, many of them don't.
So,
Subwoofers will. Many
yep.
subwoofers will
Oh
have
yeah,
this,
lots do.
especially ID subwoofers because they don't want to have to build 2 amps.
And a lot of big amps, big
Yeah,
amps from companies
yeah.
and that. A lot of these have that switch.
So when I moved to Australia, and I wrote an article about this on Audioholics, you can do a
Hmm.
search for voltage transformers or something like that on
Yeah.
Audioholics. You'll see that I wrote an article because I went to Australia, which was 240 over there,
Hmm.
240, 50 hertz. So I ended up, I think, maybe 220. It's something like that. Anyways,
Yeah, it's 220, 240.
you need to buy a voltage transformer which steps it
Yeah.
down. What it doesn't do, it usually is step down the hertz, the
Convert it, yeah, from
it doesn't
60
convert
to,
the
or
hertz.
from 50 to 60 in this case.
Yeah, that
Oh.
does not happen. It just steps it down from 240. And I've got a big one, and you know what? I could probably let go of that thing for much less than you're going to pay on Amazon. I will let you know that because it's literally sitting in my bedroom. I brought it home just in case I want to plug in some of my stuff that I bought in Australia, and I never have. So now I'm ready to get rid of it. But I got these big 2,000-volt ones, just
Hmm.
in case I needed something for my home theater, and I powered my entire home theater, receiver, projector, everything off of this thing. Like the APC plugged into it, and I plugged everything else into that, and it worked pretty good. Now some of them hum, and I had problems with some humming, which would probably drive Rob right up the wall.
Uh-huh.
But I found that the old Fonzie method of fixing it, which was hitting it until it stopped doing that, worked most of the time.
Awesome.
But
I love
I
when that works. I had that with my air conditioner in the summer. Like I
yeah,
pressed it and the little grate opened, but no air came out. I slapped it on the side and it came to life and it worked just fine.
I
I
love it.
love that fix.
So you need a voltage transformer to do this, dude, and
Yes.
it will work. Now I have no proof that this is the case, but my receiver started being weird after I took it to Australia for a while, and I don't know that the 50 hertz or the power wasn't exactly right or whatever, but the APC should have converted everything up, from
Mm.
whatever I was plugged into whatever the receiver needed.
Hmm.
But like the composite video input stopped working,
Hmm.
had some other weird issues with that receiver, and it still works for the most part. I'm not gonna say it doesn't work, and I'm kind of blamed it on the power being Australian and alcoholic because that's Australian. But that's just it's probably not. It's probably just the receiver got old and things got weird and there's power outages and stuff like that. So that's what you need.
All right.
Lastly, he's interested in a Samsung bunch of numbers HDTV that sells for about $825, but he can't find any reviews. It's the 50J5100.
Yep.
5100. So it's got to be a 50-inch,
Yep.
and everything else is just got really good. But you can't find any reviews. Can we offer any comments? No, I can't.
It's
'Cause I
more
didn't look that up.
expensive than even the M series 4K resolution Vizio at 50 inches. And it's way more expensive than the E series. I'm a fan of getting yourself a Vizio
Yes, we know
because
that. The
I mean
question
this is
answer,
edge
first of all,
lit.
answer this question. Is it
Yeah,
a good display?
it's edge lit.
No, then it's crap. Throw it away.
Yeah.
Run away. Edgelit sucks. Let's just
So I'd go for full array, local dimming, backlit, Vizio that is less expensive. And you could, if you wanted to, even get 4K resolution for less money. So no downsides going with
Yeah.
the Vizio. That's my comment. There you go.
All right. How far down this list? I feel like we've gotten pretty far.
We're doing all right. We're on to 13.
Francisco
Mm-hmm.
bought a pair of Martin Logan Theos electrostatic towers at a low price. I
All
don't know how
right.
low that might be. Anyways, he's using the Onkyo TX-NR709 receiver at the moment. He's enjoying the sound quality. He's finding the volume to be fine, but he's wondering if upgrading to a better AV receiver, adding a separate amplifier would improve the sound quality. The 709 does have pre-outs. He does have more speakers to make it into surround sound setup. They are all Monitor Audio Bronze series. So I looked up the stats on this speaker, and of course, I hate my computer. I just hate it. I hate it with the passion of 1,000 dying suns. I just hate it.
I'm interested to see how this YouTube video turns out because you've been glitching out over on my side.
You've been glitching out left and right too. I'm the one that's streaming, so
that's right.
That might be terrible. I apologize to all you people. Rob did it. So there's a review on Audioholics. I don't know if it's a review. Is it a review or a preview? It's one of those. Because it's still opening, and or it's got the stats, the specs, and stuff on it. I'm stalling for time as my computer tries to open literally a web page. So I think they were about 90 dB efficient, and they dipped down to they were 4 ohms nominal, but I think that at 20 hertz they were like 0.8 ohm. Is that right? Yeah, 4 ohm impedance at 0.8 at 20 kilohertz. So I'm sorry. Ooh, 0.8 at 20 kilohertz.
They shouldn't even be allowed to call that a 4 ohms nominal then, because that doesn't fit.
It doesn't say nominal, it just says 4 ohms, but it says it's 90 dB at 2.83 volts per meter.
Right.
So
that's not 1 watt because it's lower impedance.
Yeah.
You know, that would be 1 watt if it were an 8 ohm impedance.
I have to be honest with you. After reading those specs, I'm surprised that you haven't been dealing with a massive Onkyo fire in your house, like an Onkyo related house fire at this point.
Wow, the 709 was a good unit. That was a good model.
But still, this is a receiver that this is a pair of speakers that is not what we would call power hungry.
These are power hungry speakers. Yeah.
Now your question is, will it sound better? I can't tell you yes or no to that. I would imagine that they would sound. They could definitely sound a lot louder.
Yep.
And it may be that they have been there has been some sound quality issues that you haven't recognized.
Yeah.
Until you make the change.
Yeah, but this is a case where it could. Like, there's a lot of times where I'll say changing your amp is not going to result in a change in audible sound. This is a place where it could. So I'm okay with saying that.
Yeah. I don't think that buying a new receiver is the issue. I think that you should be looking at an external amplifier that is going to be stable with these speakers. Honestly, I don't know anything that's going to be able to do 0.8 at 20 kilohertz.
You got to get like an Anthem. Like Anthem is one of the few amplifier makers that rates into a short circuit.
I have a feeling that most amplifier manufacturers, when you say I've got these speakers, they start throwing holy water at you until you leave.
I mean, I'm darn sure an ATI could power these just fine because ATIs are pretty darn bulletproof.
I wonder if he's sitting really close to them. I mean, I think that's probably what's happening.
Even ATI doesn't spec into 0.8 ohms. They'll spec down to 2.
I don't know. I would, I'd make some calls, dude, and keep the volume reasonable.
Yeah.
For a while, because seriously, that is crazy.
How much content is happening at 20 kilohertz, so that's not really a huge concern.
If your receiver just randomly turns itself off, it's because there was a flute.
I will say, dear Lord, do not connect these to a Class D amplifier.
Oh God, no.
That would be oh man. If you want to have some fun with how horrible an amp could sound, get yourself that Axiom amplifier that I sent back and connect it to these speakers, because that will be a train wreck. Oh man. I would say you're a candidate for an external amplifier
Yeah,
actually making an audible difference because,
yeah.
you know, working within their parameters, it's darn hard to tell amplifiers apart. But you are using speakers that could take an AV receiver's amplifier out of its comfortable parameters and actually be requesting more current than it can deliver. That could definitely be happening. So yeah, I wouldn't try for an upgraded AV receiver and then powering it off of that upgraded AV receiver because the
No,
differences in
you're gonna be
amps,
the exact same
yeah,
boat.
it won't
No
be significant.
receiver
Yeah,
wants to power these. They will
that's
because you
right.
asked them to nicely,
Oh yeah, you'll get
but they do
sound.
not want to. They
Yeah.
will make it make sound. John, first one to share the good news that his wife agreed that he could add a second HSU VTF2 Mark IV to their home theater.
Ooh, yay.
Yay. Two's always better than one. I don't
Uh-huh.
remember. I'm
Now go
sure
for 4. Push your luck, John. Push your luck.
clearly Rob is not married. A few weeks ago, Rob mentioned that he uses an HEPC to make backups of all his Blu-ray discs. John is interested in doing this himself. You guys are both pirates, and piracy is not a victimless crime. It tells me that every time I watch a movie.
I'd be a pirate if anybody else had access to my backups, which they
You're
don't.
a pirate. You're a pirate. Anyways, what kind of hardware and software is necessary to do this without losing any quality? Are there any good sub $500 PCs that could be used for this? The answer to that question is yes, by the way. But
Yep.
yeah, go on to the stuff because I don't remember.
Sure. Yeah. So there's, I'll basically simplify this into there's 2 ways that you can do this. So are you someone who wants your backup to basically be exactly like putting in the physical disc? You'll have the same disc menu, go through the same selections exactly as though you were playing a physical disc. Because if that's the experience you want, then you'll want to go to slysoft.com and get their any DVD HD software. Because that software will, how shall I put this? Make the encryption no longer active so that it is possible to copy the disk onto a hard drive. And then this only works in Windows, by the way. So if you're using a Mac, the Slysoft isn't going to work. You're going to need Windows. But then down in your system tray, there'll be a little red fox icon. You right click on that, and that gives you the options to create an ISO. So just a perfect 1-to-1 exact replica of the disk as an image, or save it as a file structure. Again, it's a exact 1-to-1 replica of the disk, but you can save it either as a file or as an image. That's all done. Then you have to play it back. So you have to have something that can mount the image or understand just a disk file structure. You can actually do that all through Power DVD, which is now the only Blu-ray playback software available. So doing all of that for under $500 is difficult because those pieces of software cost money. And you're looking at about $100 for each of them. The Any DVD HD is actually like a subscription, but you can get like a lifetime pass if you want to, and then never deal with that ever again. So once you consider the cost, and if you're building your own PC, you have the cost of Windows on top of that too, all of a sudden now your hardware needs to cost like $200, and that starts to get a little bit tricky. So it's the software cost if you do it that way, which is why a lot of people do it the other way, which is they turn their disks into MKV containers. You can use a free program to do that called Make MKV, which surprisingly makes MKVs. It also deactivates the encryption itself, so you don't need another program to do that. So a lot of people are fans of that because it's free. And a lot of people don't want to have the ads and the trailers, and they don't want to deal with the disk menu. They just want to press play on their computer or on their other device that is drawing the file that you've created, and just have the movie start instantaneously. And if that's the experience you want, then Make MKV is absolutely for you. And of course, the price can't be beat. So on the hardware side, again, I'll simplify it, is all you want to do, back up your Blu-rays and play them. Because if that's all you want to do, you can use a really cheap, inexpensive computer. It might be slow creating the backups, but it can do the job. So you could use even like a Celeron processor. Certainly one of the modern Pentiums would be absolutely fine for that purpose. You do have to consider you need a Blu-ray drive, right? You got to have a Blu-ray drive if you're going to back up Blu-rays, so that adds cost. So like I say, getting the software and having a Blu-ray drive and doing it all for under $500, it's kind of doable, but it might be pushing up against that. However, if you want to do the transcoding on the fly thing, which is a really cool thing that a program like Plex could do. So Plex you can get for free. And then if you've created all your files as MKVs, you have that one file stored. You don't need to make like multiple copies of that movie or anything. You have the one MKV that has the full video quality and still has the lossless audio into it. It can still play Atmos because that just comes out as a Dolby True HD bitstream. So you haven't lost anything quality wise. Plex can transcode on the fly. So now you could play that to your tablet or play it to a Roku 3 device or an Xbox One or anything that has a Plex app. Doing it that way, you won't get the full audio quality. It'll transcode it. You won't get the full video quality, although it's darn hard to tell. But if you're transcoding on the fly like that, then you want at least, I would say, a Core i3 processor, because you want at least that amount of power so that you don't have any stutters or hiccups as it's transcoding the video on the fly. So that's about as simplified as I can make the whole software side. On the hardware side, like, you don't have to worry too much. You can certainly go back and use like an Ivy Bridge processor from a couple of years ago. That is plenty powerful enough to do any of this stuff. That those plug into an LGA 1155 socket for your motherboards, which can be cheap as chips these days. You don't really need more than 4 gigabytes of RAM, even if you're transcoding. A lot of people like to have 8, but it's not really necessary. So you can certainly build yourself quite an inexpensive PC to do this. You can even do it theoretically with a Raspberry Pi and Kodi. But it's actually creating the files and having an external Blu-ray drive. That's the trick of it. So yeah, the other resource I'll point you to over on AVS Forum, they have a whole section just on home theater computers, including there's several people over there who make guides and they update them every year, sometimes more than once a year.
As the year comes out.
As to what components to buy, best values, all that type of stuff. It's totally worth your time to look through there if you want to put one together.
Yeah.
And I think that's it.
All right. Good. Very helpful.
Oh,
Ken, we got one question left and we're gonna do it fast. Recently added a Lumagen Radiance 2020 video processor, and now his video looks amazing.
Yay! 3D
However,
LUTs, 3D LUTs.
However, when he switches the Lumagen to the input with the HTPC, which happens to be on input 4, in case that's important, it puts the PC into some kind of weird sleep mode.
Yeah.
And switching between inputs doesn't help. And even the Lumagen menu won't come up on that input. Forcing the PC to restart using the power button is the only way to get the PC to respond. But switching inputs puts it back to sleep.
That's no fun.
He's also tried 1, changing resolutions options on Windows. 2, changing Kodi resolution options. 3, turning off HDMI CEC. You should have done that anyways. Number 4, sacrificing 4 virgin chickens and a left-handed goat to the TV gods in the traditional voodoo-style ritual. 5.
Really? That's kind of disturbing if you actually did that.
Nothing drives you crazy like AV issues. 5, swapping, and I think it's a reasonable thing to do. 5, swapping, I don't know how you know the virgin chickens. 5, swapping in the left-handed goat. Seriously? I thought the right-handed goats were preferred, but maybe you cheaped out. Maybe that's why you're still having the problem. Swapping the...
I'm worried that goat has a hand. That's what I'm worried about. That's freaky, man. That's a freaky goat.
5, swapping the Oppo and the HTPC inputs on the Lumagen. And as a few forums suggested, turning off the EDID information on the Lumagen. Help me, AV Rant. You are my only hope. All right, Rob has a suggestion, and then I have a suggestion.
I'm coming at it from the home theater PC side, which is the only thing I could suggest over there is go into your BIOS and make triple sure that you don't have any sort of suspend or hibernate functions activated. That could be activated like over your network even, because there is that potentially that Ethernet signal that could come over HDMI. So anything that's your wake on LAN settings or anything like that, make sure all of that is deactivated, because some kind of signal is seemingly getting sent. And the only hardware connection between your PC and the Lumagen is the HDMI connection. So I'm like, just make sure there's no potential sleep wake type things active in your BIOS whatsoever.
So I took it from the Lumagen side because I figured if anything was going to be wrong, it was going to be that stupid thing. Not because it's stupid. I mean, just because it's different, and when you come into a product like this, a lot of times, they have specific, very weird issues. So I went to the updates page on their page and I searched for HTPC. And I got on the third from the top, and these are usually in reverse chronological order. So
Newest at the top.
newest at the top. So the third one down. So the third one down. It says that whatever this update is, adds a bunch of stuff. Blah blah blah. Words. Fixes for loss of video issues with Chromebox and other HTPC type sources. So I have to ask you: is this thing 100% fully updated, and does it have this particular update just in case? I would check that out as well, because a lot of times there's your issue right there. It's like Rob's sort of weird signal, or maybe it doesn't know what to do, or the HTTPC handshake goes way off, or it just doesn't know what to do with that particular resolution or signal, and it freaks out and everything goes kaput. So that's my suggestion.
And I think it's a darn good one.
Yeah.
Everything has firmware out these days, man.
Yeah. Always don't come to me and not say you haven't updated your firmware, at least.
Although sometimes that's what destroyed the device, right? We've had that happen too.
Yes, don't brick stuff. My wife did brick her phone that one time. Anyways, lastly, he says, Ken wanted to suggest the NVIDIA Shield TV with Kodi as a fairly inexpensive means of playing back content, including 4K still images, which was something that Lee Overstreet mentioned a long time ago as something that he wanted to do back before he stopped talking to us, because he doesn't want to check his speaker wires.
We haven't heard back from him. He warned us that if we didn't hear from him, it meant it was his speaker wires. It's all I can assume, Lee. I'm waiting for you to tell me differently, because otherwise, dude, I'm assuming that you found a speaker wire short.
Howard, Alan, Infinite Gary is back. Adrian and Jonathan, we will be getting to you next week. We did a pretty good job.
I think so.
15.
Put another dent in it.
Put a very big dent in it. All right. So these are the questions that we answered. If you would like to get your questions answered on AV Rant, feel free to give it. Send it to us. Tom at avrant.com, Rob at avrant.com, and questions at avrant.com. Please send it to all three so that we can all peruse them beforehand. I want to thank Austin for helping getting together the list this week.
Yes. Big help.
There's also www.avrant.com where you can leave us a donation, like Ilango left us a donation, which was great. Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast, where you can interact with us. And at First Reflect for Rob, at AVRant_Tom for me, and at Austin Pond for Austin. We want to thank our listeners of the week, the people that try to help my wife out are Herb, Carl, Jonathan, and Chris. And for Rob?
Folks who sent some very nice messages to me. We had Scott M, Gabe, Chris, Jason, Gary, and Scott S.
Yes. Already said that Ilango has his donation. John for his for buying the HSU sub, and Ken for SVS, and James. We look forward to getting the covers for our DIY panels, which we will have to DIY the heck out of. So
I'll just put them over top of one of my existing gigs, because I don't have time to put together a panel of my own. I really don't.
I think I'm gonna take one of mine down, and I'm gonna redo it. I think I'm going to build a wooden frame for it, because first of all, I don't think that the he didn't sound like there was enough extra material, because mine are 4 inches thick, so I don't think there's enough material off the side of these things to do a 4-inch thick one on each side.
Could be. Yeah. Might have to stretch it.
We will. I don't want to distort the image. We will see. All right. Until next week, for AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
And we will be having the after party as soon as I can make my computer stop this, do something else, and then start the after party. That took a long time. How did I not crash during all this?
Yeah, honestly, no outright crash. Yeah, we had plenty of little glitchy video back and forth, but that's fine. I mean,
I haven't even stopped the thing yet, because I can't get my computer to do it.
It's in the queue. That command will be executed when it gets to it.
There it goes, and there you are, and goodbye, people. Nope. So I pressed the button.